Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Oladele Ayorinde. I'm happy to welcome you to the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series. Today's focus is quite unique in its own right because of the kind of issues and ideas we've been exploring in the last few months, particularly issues around creativity and the role of Nigerian indigenous culture, or to say Nigerian culture in the transformation of arts, and the sustainability of our Nigerian arts. And by that I mean music. And music in this sense cut across every media, from film down to everyday life, religious, and also, even in education and other areas of life that we encounter music on a daily basis. But today's focus is simply, today we are focusing on the revival, particularly, transformation of practices in of Nigerian film industry. But specifically, we are focusing on the emerging theater, musical theater industry. We all know, in the last 10 years, the Nigerian theater industry, musical theater industry, has moved, in terms of transformation, from its normal, what we can call community-based practice to a more, established industry through forms of innovation, agency, and the roles of, particularly now, music in this development process is quite, evident in the recent years. So, and today, I am happy, to welcome one of the pioneers in this sense, one of the agency, one of the social agents in this context of development to our platform, to the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series. I mean, in the person of Mr. Ajayi. Mr. Ajayi is not new on this platform. In fact, this is the second appearance, on this same topic and explorative journey in terms of Nollywood, Nigerian film industry, and as well as the particularities around musical theater. So, Mr. Ajayi, thank you for honoring our invitation, and we are happy to welcome you to the Organ House today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Coordinator. I'm very excited to be here as usual.
Definitely. Definitely. I will get back to you shortly as soon as I open. I'd like to provide a kind of short context to what we are doing today for some of us, for some of our new friends and colleagues, who are joining us for the first time or again after a long time. So the question of today is simply, how has music contributed or facilitated the development of musical theater in Nigeria? And also, how does music enhance stories and storytelling in film and theater? And by extension, what are the approaches to writing, and I put, composing in this context, or in composing music for musical theater in Nigeria? So this is a focus for today, but in a more broader, sense, and providing a more background. Many of us who have been working in the musical industry, at least in the last 20 years, we know the shifts and a kind of transformation that that the Nigerian film industry, particularly the musical theater industry, witnessed in the post-2010 era. Following the staging of what is now Saro the Musical, the Bola Austin Peterson production, and how this particular musical, changed or affected, or facilitated a new movement in the Nigerian entertainment industry. I'm sure you know about other forms like Kakadu and other interesting musical initiatives in the last, let's say, 10 years. this is quite fascinating and also interesting, and also called for a form of, reflection and, in terms of what is the context for this? What are the, what can we learn from it? And how can this initiative itself, shape scholarly discourse on the one hand, and also further contribute to the broader Nigerian film industry? So today's focus is more on the practical side. We've had a conversation around the theoretical, historical, at least this time last month, actually. So today, I'm happy to have Mr. Ajayi to lead us and show us, because he is actually one of the pioneers. I'm sure some of you know Mr. Ajayi wrote the music, arranged, and is responsible for the Saro the Musical. That musical is responsible for that, for the music initiative, the transformation, and the kind of aesthetics and innovative ideas that shape that production, which has been many people has been talking about, and is there in town today. So I want Mr. Ajayi to introduce himself again to introduce himself and let us know you. What are you busy working on? Where are you in your project? And from there we can now launch into the the focus and the business of the day.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ayo. So, like you have rightly said, my name is Ajayi, and I am a composer, music director. Yeah, and I started my foray into musical theater with Bolanle Austin Peters production, like you rightly said, when we started Saro the Musical. And then from there, I've gone on to do so many other productions of my own, which include Legends the Musical and OMG the Musical. Presently, what am I doing? I'm trying to hone my skill in composition. In composition. So I'm taking my compositional studies beyond just the talents and then the little compositional techniques that we did in school. Now I'm taking it to a broader level, academic composition. And so that's what I'm doing presently. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm quite challenged also, because even before 2010, as some of us know, Mr. Ajayi is not an uncommon phenomenon, in the Nigerian musical space, being a scholar, a long-standing at companies, and a creator of different forms, but taking it to that new context of composition is a clearing call to some of us also to see into this form of process of self-making, what the Cameroonian anthropologist Francis Nyamjos has theorized, the incomplete process that shapes the humanity in African, cosmology. So thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Ajayi, let's go into this process. I think I read the questions were focused earlier. So the question is, I think it's 3 in 1. And I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to hand over the platform to you to take us into your world and see and what we can learn. In the process, I'm going to interrupt you and call for things, explain this for us, explain this to us. And after your presentation, we are going to, as usual, of course, we are going to open the platform for our colleagues who have joined us from across the world. Again, our friends, thank you so much for joining us. So, Mr. Ajayi, we have 3 questions here. The first one is, how has music contributed or facilitated the development of musical theater in Nigeria? Then the second one is, how does music itself enhance stories and storytelling in film and theater? Then what are the approaches to writing or composing music for musical theater in Nigeria? So these are the questions for today. So I'm going to hand over to you, and let's see how you are going to help us engage these ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coordinator. So may I share my screen, please?
Definitely, please.
Okay.
Please do.
So I've prepared this very simple presentation for this seminar. And then it says exploring cultural elements for the development of musical theater in Nigeria. I'll be touching on introduction to musicals, types of musicals, Nigerian musicals, the historical background, exploring cultural elements and music in musicals, and writing for musicals. I'll touch all those things briefly. Jack says, when you can no longer speak, you sing. When you can no longer sing, you dance. You know, and then this is just the concept of musical. Musical uses 4 phenomenons, basically. You know, musical theater is a theatrical performance that encompasses 4 key components: songs, spoken dialogue, acting, and dancing. With these 4 integrated into one another, we have the phenomenon called musical theater. So it is too commonplace also for people to argue that musical theater is incomplete without dance. You know, out of all the components, yeah, dance is very important, but sometimes musical theater does not need to have dance. You know, and then in response to this, however, in musical theater, realism and entertainment, Taylor argues that some have very little dance, though they have the spectacle of a different type. For example, The Lion King, others tell their stories through dance, such as Cats. Some works are thorough composed, like Les Miserables. We all know Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera. While others use music diegetically or metatextually as Cabaret does. So Taylor's overall point, Taylor is telling us that musical theater has endless combination of elements or components. So musical theater can be music and the script and a choir. It can be music and dance and the script. Musical theater can be music and dance without the script. So it depends on who is producing. It depends on what's the goal of the production. Musical theater's emotional content, specifically its story and aspects such as love, anger, humor, and pathos, is communicated through words, movement, music, and technical enhancements, all integrated into one. I'm going to amplify the word integration soon. While music has been an essential component of dramatic presentations for a long time, the modern Western musical theater was instituted in the 19th century. Types of musical, quickly. We're going to look at the book musical, jukebox musical, musical review, concept musical, film musical, golden age musical, and rock musical. For book musical, this is a musical that includes original written story, music, and lyrics. Jukebox musical, this is a stage show that uses songs of a recording artist, band, or style of music to form the basis for a production. And under jukebox, of course, we have the biographical and autobiographical. What's a concept? Musical review, sorry. Review means a theoretical entertainment consisting usually of brief and often funny sketches and songs. Most times reviews don't really have scripts. They're just skits that combine together to form a musical production. Concept musical, powerful way to present a message. Rather than focusing on characters, a concept musical will focus on themes. And then we see this a lot at the International British Theatre Festival in Lagos and so many other theatre fringes across the world. What is a film musical? Film musical brings the magic of silver screen to the stage. Film-based stage adaptations regularly draw large theater goers to the West End. An example of a film-based theater musical is Hamilton. Hamilton as shown on stage and on screen. Golden Age musical and rock musical. So, Nigerian musicals, historical background. Hubert Ogunde is regarded as the father of modern theater in Nigeria because he brought professional theater to a new level by establishing a troupe whose primary purpose was theater in 1945. Prior to Ogunde, the African Nigerian theater dated back to the early years through various festivals and ritual ceremonies. As the roots of the European drama go back to the Egyptian Osiris and the Greek Dionysius, so are the origins of the Nigerian drama, likely to be found in the early religious and magical ceremonies and festivals of the Yoruba, Egungun Festival, the Umo Festival of the Igbo, the Owu and Oru water masquerades of the Ijo, and so many other festivals and rites and rituals that we have across Nigeria. And this is John Pepe Clark arguing that, yes, musicals can be traced, or theatrical productions can be traced as far back as early ages when we have all these rites being performed. So going forward, the major disruption to the way we view and experience theater came with colonialism. The advent of foreign religions and the new mode of education as introduced by the foreign missionaries. The colonial experience resulted in voices Hubert Ogunde, Kola Omola, and Duro Ladipo, amongst others. Hubert Ogunde was hugely successful. Hubert Ogunde was hugely successful. His traveling troupe gained immediate popular support when he introduced scripts, realistic theater, and dramatic action into the performances. The period of Hubert Ogunde and Duro Ladipo was followed by individuals such as Wole Soyinka, Jimi Solanke, Femi Osofison, and many others of the Ibadan, University of Ibadan, theatrical school of studies. So our present focus is in this millennium, the period between 2000 and now. This millennium saw the rebirth of the Nigerian musical theater with a production called Saro. The musical released in 2013. Although Saro was not the first big-scale musical theater of the millennium, having had Olurumbi, Kakadu, and a few others come before, but Saro the Musical defined stage productions in terms of aesthetics and economic empowerment. Saro the Musical was a hugely successful production, and it was shown many times in Lagos and Abuja before going on a tour to London. The 10th anniversary just happened last year. So what am I saying? There's been theater in Africa, in Nigeria. If you notice there, your festival, when they sing, hey, yo, yeah, yo, hey, yo, it's participatory. Everything in Africa, from the rites or Oshogbo Festival and all these festivals, it's very participatory. It's a kind of theater that people engage in. It could be social, it could be religious, it could be spiritual, but these are all forms of theater. What made Saro successful? Before Saro's arrival, many productions were traditional plays and musicals with low budgets, insignificant technical equipment, not trendy costuming, and limited music output, especially mostly traditional music. Bolanle Austin Peters realized the limitation in the industry. Despite being a lawyer, she identified an opportunity to commercialize the sector. There are numerous producers today who have come from the BAP Informal Theater School, and those who have been watching from the sidelines who are now producing musicals in their own unique way. Interculturalism in Nigerian musical theater. In Odun, discusses strategies and power in the Yoruba play of transformation. Christina Boskolak asserts that Ogunde also incorporated cosmopolitan and urban influences from highlife music, American vaudeville, and imported cinema. He gave voice to anti-colonial sentiments while celebrating and affirming the value of Yoruba, Nigeria, and African cultures. Ogunde blended both traditional conventions and new elements introduced by European colonialists into his performances, as Boskole makes clear. Duro Ladipo, another author and producer and director, was a church organist, and he utilized his influence in his works without harming the natural Yoruba culture. So what I'm trying to say is that these people from the era that I call the golden age of theater in Nigeria, they absorbed, there was influences of European and then foreign interests in their works. But they used it in a certain way to promote Nigeria and the Yoruba culture. In many of our productions, we introduce elements such as fashion and costuming, displaying the dress patterns of people from cultures of years ago. Many times we have recalled festivals in certain cultures that involve showcasing dances, music, and stage props, which are seldom showcased in the mainstream today. And musicals feature a plethora of cultural instruments, particularly percussion instruments that are authentic to the cultures depicted in the story or the themes. These instruments are not commonly used or readily available in the urban areas where most of us reside today. And then these instruments include djembe, udu, ekwe, oja, even the iyailu, omele, bata, all these instruments, we get to use them for our productions. Exploring cultural elements. We have established the impact of colonialism on the cultures of Africa. But also we need to speak about nationalism. And nationalism has become apparent. It's become a prominent topic in literature over the years, with authors such as Wole Soyinka and Chinua Achebe leading the way in Nigeria. There are others across the African continent, Ngugi wa Thiong'o and a lot of others. This phenomenon was responded to by the theater and music industries through the creation of works and music that are anti-colonial. A very big voice that we are all very familiar with in this regard is the Afrobeats maestro, Fela Anikulapo Kuti, who created his own sound, which he referred to as Afrobeats. Since then, a number of music artists have come up with new sounds or reimagined existing ones, such as Afrobeats, Afrofusion, and Afro whatever that you have, from Burna Boy to Wizkid to Simi, Fino, and all of them. They have different names, Brimo, they have different names for their artistic creations. So how does the musical theater industry react to this music revival, if I can use that word? The prevalent musical style in Nigeria is the jukebox, as introduced and popularized by Bolanle Austin Peters. A lot of producers, directors, musical directors simply create a list of popular Nigerian music and develop a story around it. Production houses that are more established typically come up with a story and use Nigerian music to interpret each scene, or in very specific cases, each dialogue. So what we have is Nigerian jukebox. Mostly what we have today is Nigerian jukebox as musical theater. So people take works of Asha, for example, and find some of the areas that are trendy. For example, one of the works of Fela, where Fela sang about yellow fever, you dey bleach, oh, you dey bleach, yellow fever, you dey bleach, oh, you dey bleach. A few productions have used this music to talk about the theme of how people want to become white by all means. So people have used Fela's music to create such musicals. There are other areas, especially all those guys from Ajegunle. For example, in Saro the Musical, Saro started with drum rumbling that's depicting an African setting. And from there, we moved on to the opening song, the opening theme song, which is traditional, but with a lot of Western influences. And then what we did with that was that we superimposed the chants, a Yoruba chant on it. The chant says, Atoto arere o, ẹ káàbọ̀ sí ilẹ̀ Saro, ilẹ̀ òmìnira, and it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And then you could feel the cultural elements from the costuming, the music itself, the chants, which is very important. Chants is a very important aspect of African culture. So, and then from these, we proceeded to other aspects which uses popular music. Like, for example, we had the scene where we had to depict the miscreants or area boys, if you call it, if you like. And then, of course, the best music to depict something like that's like an Oshodi scene, for example. And then the best music to use for such scene is Boys from Ajegunle, and Daddy Shoki just came to mind. And then you know all the songs of Daddy Shoki, and then they have a particular dance style. And then this dance style almost feel like they are deformed. And this is what the area boys basically do. So these are some of the elements being explored in Nigerian musical theater. A few scholars like myself have ventured into book musicals with original music, and some of our productions are tilting towards song-through forms, which is more like a bridge between musicals and operas. This is another, more like, well, maybe we get to talk about the difference between musicals and operas. There is another section of directors and producers who prefer concept musicals. These are regularly short works dealing with specific social menace. Sometimes they talk about mental health, and then they use experimental music. Sometimes some even talk about drug abuse in the society. These are concepts that people just come up with and then create, and these are trendy topics in the environment, and then they create music, experimental music to back that up. Most Nigerian musicals display cultural elements through costuming, technical considerations, props, locations, language switch, and coding. I'm going to talk a little bit about language switch and coding. And then it is because in Nigeria, we use a lot of coding. We use a lot of languages that's an average Nigerian who does not belong to the caucus or the caucus of these people who might not even understand. We have a lot of slangs. Any music artist who wants to produce music now, music that will sell, knows that you need a slang. You need slangs like Alanta, a lot of them out there. They just come up with different slangs, and then these slangs are accompanied by dances. So most times, if you don't understand these slangs, you don't belong into that caucus. These are part of the cultural elements. Music in theater ranges from traditional to folk, contemporary and original songs. Also, there is transition music from one scene to the other, and background music to create the right mood for the different sceneries. These are mostly trending Nigerian music. Yeah, basically, most productions will use trending Nigerian music as transitions and then a scenic music for their productions. And it's the same way in film. Most musicals make adjustments to the music each year to reflect current music and dance trends. So if you watch a particular musical this year, or if you had seen a musical last 2 years, and it is showing again this year, and it is a jukebox, it's a Nigerian jukebox, I am very sure that you won't listen to the same music. The music would have changed, because the music that was trending in 2020 is not trending again today. So people would, at a point, it was skelewu, and then aye, but today people are not listening to all that again. I've forgotten the Ashake is raining, and there is another guy that the inhabitants of my house, they used to disturb me with his music every morning. But I've forgotten that particular music. Those music, I went to see a musical here, right here, MW, the musical, and these were like the bedrock of the musical. If MW is going to show again next year, they would have rejigged the music to trending music. Now, in my own musical, OMG the Musical, for example, OMG is a story of a woman, Gafuma, marginalized by superior powers in a social society. To discover her potential, she revisits the past, where she met with heroines like Olufumilaya Ransom Kuti, Margaret Ekpo, and Gambo Sawaba, who helped her to identify her strength. So basically, OMG is saying Olufumilaya Ransom Kuti, Margaret Ekpo, and Gambo Sawaba, 3 leading Nigerian female activists who were heroines of the emancipation and empowerment of Nigerian women. Now, what is fascinating about OMG the Musical? OMG the Musical's opening scene is a dream sequence that is powerful. And the music configuration combines your traditional songs. And then it combines this particular music to interpret the scene, and it combines it with original music. The traditional Eyo songs and chant are evergreen. History has it that the Eyo festival itself originated from Ijebu in Ogun State, but it's since been taken over and celebrated with pomp and gusto in Lagos. The music of the festival has been continually refined to suit different purposes. Apart from the festival, Fuji artists like Kwamwan and some Owambe party musicians have popularized the music at Lagos Owambes, and of course, even outside the shores of the country, and then Nothing Ill Festival comes to mind. The opening scene's original compositions are starkly different from the heavily percussive traditional Eyo music, but there are similarities in the melodic writing regardless of the genre difference. While the melodies stick to the 5-note pentatonic scale, the harmonies are extensive and use secondary dominants to brighten or dim the colors, depending on the mood. 2 specific issues come to sharp focus due to the music's due to the music's nature, the Eyo as a spirit, and the dream. So what I did with OMG is Eyo, and then above these you have there is an Eyo communicating with Gafuma. How did water get into the coconut? How did the rain that makes the coconut sweet makes the bitter leaf bitter? And then Gafuma gets to respond, I do not know. Some things are beyond questioning. They are just what they are. They are just what they are. To question them is to question who Who are you? So all these were happening simultaneously as the Ayo music was going on the ground. So despite the use of Nigerian languages in writing and singing of the Ayo traditional songs and other songs, the entire musical is written and performed in English. The other scenes combine original compositions with rearranged traditional pieces, folk tunes, Nigerian popular music, and other genres in a seamless in and out, sometimes intricate, superimposed format that leaves us with an artistic coherence that is necessary to seize the attention of the people for over a 140 minutes period of the musical. And then possibly my biggest contribution to the musical theater industry in Nigeria is Legends the Musical, co-produced and directed by Ajayi and Gbenga Yusuf. This is a fictional story of 5 African heroes, or gods, if you like, who were called upon to save our world from destruction. And then these 5 are Shango, Shaka Zulu, Nefertiti, Nanaya Shantua, and then Amina of Zazao. You know, the plot followed that they could not salvage the world because they have their own frailties, and that the greatest enemy of mankind is man himself, which is symbolically referred to in the plot as the shadow. The opening music, which is a call to the legends, is built on the principles of minimalism. It was written bearing in mind how the worshippers of these gods use repetitive music to get themselves into a spiritual trance. And in place of increase in tempo, I use the horns lines. I deploy the horns line to heighten the tension. This production uses a musical style that is almost sung through, with all original music rearranged from traditional and folk music. I'd like to quickly play this, if I am permitted. Okay, that's a very short clips from Legends the Musical, and then how we use music, costuming, technicals, plots, locations, and every other thing to portray our musical African cultures, or Yoruba culture, or Nigerian culture, as you have it. So briefly, I'm going to also talk about writing for musical theater or film. This would require another session on its own. Meanwhile, I'll quickly drop a few tips, which are: the minimum base is to at least be a songwriter, and you must have mastered the art of improvisation. And then why did I say this? We mix up concepts like composers and songwriters in our part of the world. So most of the Nigerian musicals that we have right now employs songwriters to write songs that fit the scenes. And then in some other cases, when you get Nigerian music, when you get all the trending music, you arrange it, you rearrange it, you improvise on it to fit the scenes, to fit the different scenes and dialogues. And that's the reason why I said the minimum base is to at least be a songwriter and must have mastered the art of improvisation. Then you need a lot of time devoted to script reading and script analysis. You need time to study your scripts and see how you can use music to communicate, how music can actually transport the message from the script or from the stage to the audience. And I tell people that the biggest medium to actually communicate in theater is through music. Music can interpret so many things. So you need to think about how to use your music to interpret each of the scenes or even each of the words, each of the hidden meanings from each of the dialogues needs to be conveyed with music. Music sets the tone for each of, even outside theater, we use music to set the tone for different emotions. You know, music has power to do a lot of things, and these are the things that we use in theater. The most important part that we are still grappling with in our musical offerings is blurring the lines between music and dialogue. And then what do I mean by this? A lot of musical productions today have stand-alone music. And then they have stand-alone dance. And then when you look at the production, it's very nice, it's beautiful, it's lovely, but then the integration is not there. They are standalone. Unlike when you watch an Andrew Lloyd Webber live, Phantom of the Opera or whatever, or any other production, when you see it live, you can really distinguish between speech and music because it's interwoven. It comes in and out of each other. And then how is it possible to do this? Is to make sure that the transitions are seamless between dialogues and music. People are not waiting, oh, they're about to sing, oh, okay, let's listen to the interlude, and then, you know, and this happens a lot in musical theater in Nigeria. So I think that's writing for musical theater theme. In terms of theme, I think it's Peter Silvanos, who has done a very great job on film music in Nigeria. And he has talked about prefiguring, where you write music that encompasses everything that happens in the play. You know, and then sometimes also with the new works that I have seen on Netflix, especially Eleshioba, which is very, very traditional. In this particular production, the music sits with the settings. It sits well with the dialogues and every other thing. The scene that has the European settings, they got an orchestra to play. Fantastic music. I can't remember what they played. I can't remember right now. And then the traditional scenes were just drumming, doting the scenes all through. And then chants from Braimo and a few Olonwiyo, all those chants, beautiful chants. So it does not have to be big music. The creation doesn't have to be big music, but something that helps to communicate the intention of the script writer. In conclusion, while it is obvious that our musicals deploy so much cultural elements in their formation, especially in the music, there's still the aspect of proper composition techniques that is missing. My little foray into academic composition has broadened my horizon, and these hypostates will affect the industry positively and give us a space in global discourse. I have been privileged to see a few musical theater productions at the West End. And I can tell you that aside from songwriting, which is a major skill that's writers, people who write for musical theater and films should have, The other aspect is to understand the basics of composition, how you can effectively use materials over time, develop, and then repeat materials, develop, and then use it for the stretch of a period of time. This is missing presently in the offerings that we have presently in Nigeria, in the Nigerian musical theater space. Also, lots of research needs to be conducted into our pre-colonial history, as our theater and films are basically regurgitating the same ideas, whereas the historic past holds so much information for the future. So what do I mean by this? If you go on Netflix or see any musical theater, we are talking about love. We're talking about village people chasing one people, witchcraft. And then these are things that we focus on, and then we ignore the past. The Asians and the Europeans, they've used their history to colonize the world. They've used their history, they've shoved the world with their history. So even in schools, instead of reading about our own history, we read about Osiris, we talk about Zeus, we talk about, in fact, our children know Thor. Our children know Thor, but they don't know Shango. There are a lot of historical perspectives that we can actually delve in from the past. And then recently I sat down with a producer and a director, and we're talking about the past. We talked about Igbo landing, which, well, I don't know whether it's a myth or a real happening. People have not explored anything close to this. And this is a very important story that when we push this out into the world, it celebrates our resilience as Africans. There is the Iva Valley protest as well. There are a lot of stories. There are a lot of stories. Now, these are even colonial eras. Iva Valley is colonial era. I'm talking about pre-colonial era. There are those years. There are a lot of stories that's with good research, a lot of producers and authors can come up with authentic or original stories that will still sell the African culture. Thank you very much. With these few points of mine, I think I've been able to convince us that Nigerian musicals use a lot of cultural elements, although we intend to do more. But presently, as it stands, we use a lot of cultural elements, either in a mixed form with influences from the foreign lands or in its authentic version. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ajayi. This is quite insightful and quite, illuminating in the ways that it tends to triangulate. So I say bringing together different, audience. I'm talking about you started with, like I said, you started with ideas around post-colonial condition, everyday life in the post-colony, and how these are quite represented or are manifesting in filmmaking and theater in Nigeria. And you delve into issues around, reproduction, on how the Nollywood scene, popular music scene are also contributing to everyday production of the cultural space, the political space, and everyday life in contemporary Africa. We say post-colony in the technical social science terms. And you also went into basic details of history, taking us from Hubert Ogunde's explorations in Nigerian theater and dovetailing this into foreign theories. I wasn't even expecting that. Thank you so much, showing us both the scholarly, the professional, the artistic, and we need to give you a professorship now because yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is quite interesting. I enjoy every bit, and I'm challenged also. I'm quite challenged, your take in on this issue. So I am going to open the platform shortly, but before that, I'd like to engage you a bit, on some of the things you just explained to us. You know, you you were referencing your production alongside the other production, and I'm happy that you also played us some of the musicals you have done and citing ideas from different clips, cleavages across ideas and things that you have done in the last 10 years to say. What can you say? Three things that defines this new industry. Three major characters that we should look out for that defines the new Nigerian musical theater industry, or by extension, the Nollywood, because I'm still coming back to the election over you mentioned. So, but let's talk about musical theater as a whole for now. What are the three major characters, musical characters, that we should constantly look out for, or that are prevailing, the reappearing motifs in these works?
Okay, so if you say that, what are the features that we should be looking out for?
Look out for characters, features.
I think the most important one is the advancement of technology.
How?
The way musical theaters are run these days is different from the way it was in the past. Now we have scenic changes, seamless scenic changes. On the sometimes producers use LED screens to get this done, because we don't have revolving stages in Nigeria. So sometimes they use LED screens to get the seamless transitions between scenes, which is very important, because over the years, what we've been doing is moving in props in and out, very heavy props, and or have a generic whatever that's just speaks to the whole production. But then advancement in technology has brought this. And in fact, I think BAP goes a bit higher by introducing projectors, which gives you a kind of ambience that you would see in Broadway or the West End. I think the advancement of technology is very important. And then there's something I didn't mention about musical theater. Musical theater is different from opera. In opera, we expect that you use your voice, you project, because of the kind of music. You project, and then we expect you to have this good resonance so that, it's acoustic. But musical theater is not. Musical theater is a response to opera. In opera, you can do shows in London, you can do your shows in Italian. People don't care about the script, they care about the music. So people just listen and they enjoy it without probably not even understanding what it means, except when they now say synopsis, or the lyrics is being rolled out on a projector somewhere. But in musical theater, there is great emphasis on the script and on the dialogues. There's very great emphasis on the dialogues. So in musical theater, music comes to glue all the dialogues and the dances together. So, and then I think that, yes, in musical theater today, we are doing a lot in Nigeria to make sure that also is the case for us here. So basically, I think music is going to, like I said, jukebox is the prevalent part of a musical theater. And then people use trending music. But if you look at the arrangements of those music by all these people, and then these are not even people who have gone to school. The way they creatively woven all those music together with the dialogues is something actually to look out for. And I also always challenge scholars like you that maybe some of these producers in the studios or some of these music directors in the theaters, maybe our schools should have some certificate courses for them because they are doing a good job. Thank you.
Okay, on your last point, and that's why we are having you today. Yeah, that's why we are having you today. And we've been engaging professionals. You know, like I said earlier, one of the ideas around the organ house concert and seminar series is simply to take is to redefine scholarship and music education. What we know is you must go to school and some certain people must teach you because of one forms of criteria or the other. But unfortunately, you know, like we discussed earlier, the African post-colony itself is quite fraught with a lot of ambiguities, including the ideas of education, like what we are doing. So what we are doing is simply to interrogate and open that to redefine what constitutes music education, music research in relation to the happenings and the development in the society, particularly in Nigerian context. And thanks for, you know, always honoring our invitation. And for some of us joining today, we are also coming for you. We are open for collaborations. We want you to also come here and share your ideas. This project is we can say family project, you know, because it's a community project. We want you to come and contribute, bring whatever ideas you have. We are willing to, you know, engage with you. So back to the point today, Mr. Ajayi, thanks for that wonderful explanation. Yes, you explained Bola Austin Peterson's approach, and I'm quite excited about the ways because you mentioned that jukebox approach. And this tends to you know, your own approach tends to expand on this particular approach. You mentioned minimalist approach, which is a kind of early 20th century, you know, school of thought in music composition. We're talking about the avant-garde compositions of Igor Stravinsky, Arno Schoenberg, all those stuff, you know, all the big neoclassical approach. And the same idea dovetailed was reproduced by our own scholar, what is now popular as African art music, particularly the early pioneers like Akinwuba, Ayo Bankole Senior, and can talk about, you know, Okechukwu Ndubuisi Arambakile, that's choral arranger, fantastic arranger. So we've seen all these new minimalist ideas in their works. And I'm quite surprised that you are following that approach. But why? Why is it so relevant to a public, you know, creative spheres like musical theater that people don't even care about, you know, the techniques, underlying techniques compared to opera? So why is that so important for us to learn in Nigeria and to follow such approach?
Okay, so in answering your question, I'm just going to quickly play a new composition for theater. And I want to drive at something because you mentioned techniques.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's not audible here. It's not clear from this end. I don't know if it's...
Oh,
to our ears, perhaps because of the
okay,
yeah,
okay, let me just pick to it. I'm sorry, I don't know, I should have done something to
of course,
help me.
technological yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, in writing for music, like I implore people to get more knowledge. So in writing for music, I have had the opportunity of studying works of Andrew Lloyd Webber and the rest of them. And I realized that there are certain techniques in their works, in their compositions. There are certain techniques from sometimes using pitch sets, to using ISO reading, to minimalism, to just name it. All those techniques, you'll find it in some of the works of these people. So I realized that ours is basically just songwriting. You just write and get a band to play. So for me, I think that for us to get into the global discourse, we need to be able to do some analysis on our music. And that's where minimalism comes from. And that's where the use of minimalism for that particular production comes from. Because it's my intention that legends will travel, will go on tour. And when it goes on tour, I want people to be able to say, okay, yes, these are the features that we have seen in this particular production, in the music of this production. And of course, like you said, minimalism is in a way related to Africa. Most of our people have used it. It's in a way related to Africa, and so many other techniques. We talk about pentatonic scale for African music. Sometimes we talk about modal, music being modal, and then all those things are very important for composition. All these compositional techniques or compositional frameworks are very important for the musical theater and our themes. So that's the reason why I implore that people should actually take composition seriously rather than just being this talent thing that we do in Nigeria, which is great, by the way. But I think just taking it a notch higher will get us in the global discourse. Thank you.
Okay, one more question, then we open to our colleagues for further engagement. Now, I'm going back to your earlier perspective, particularly your entry points around the post-colonial condition, everyday life, idea of consumption, why people listen to particular music, and why they tend to see particular movie, particular home video, issues around leisure, particularly, and how these issues around leisure speak to the context of decoloniality in contemporary Africa, which is quite a discourse which is also very, very important today, and is always, in most cases, the elephant in the room. People want to say decolonial, particularly in a scholarly space like this, and recently I noticed some of our colleagues, professional colleagues, just had a conversation around that same idea, particularly in Nigerian film. I'm talking about the recent conference, chaired by my brother here, Peter Sivanos, and one of our colleagues also in the US. So these ideas around decolonization, decoloniality, post-coloniality has always been the elephant in the room. But let's bring it to home. Let's bring it to the everyday context. I saw Eleshinyoba, and I also saw a similar one, which is the Kunle Afolayan's production. What is that particular one that came out at the same time? Anikulapo. So I was quite impressed, the ways in which music, the approach and the way they utilize the African Nigerian context to tell those stories and trying to bring those ideas back home. I was quite impressed, and yeah. However, I've been asking myself, in fact, I wrote a review as which unfortunately I had to drop somewhere because I wasn't, yeah. But the point here is Anikulapo Eleshinyoba used, particularly Eleshinyoba, I was, intrigued at the ways in which these ideas travels through sound, the ways in which the writer and the composers, interwove or trying to calibrate different idea and bring it together through through music. What do you think about this in terms of saying what people understand, in terms of consumption, particularly markets, and what can we learn from this kind of approach? It is not that these works are too perfect. No, in fact, some of them also, to a larger extent, they also reinforce some ideas around coloniality, of course. I'm sure you know about the scenes I'm talking about. But let's talk about music now. The stories, the music, how do they, bringing them back into the market and commerce economy, what can we learn from them from your own perspective as a writer, in terms of the ways we craft we do our job, the way we tell stories, the way we communicate ideas? Yeah. What can you say about this?
Okay, so permit me to actually say that I enjoyed Anikulapo, seriously, just because of the cinematography and then I think they got the cinematography right and the locations and every other thing, but the music, it was 2145. It was very 145, and I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you're doing something this traditional and you're doing 145, who wants to listen to it?
Okay, let me interrupt you. That is my point. You and I, because of our positionality as a scholar, we know what is 145. But those people across the streets at Oshodi, Mushi, Onisha, Umuaya or Unsuka, they don't know 145. What they know is the sound and how it speaks to their everyday essence. And this is one of the reasons they tend to sit and consume this work as part of their everyday life.
Doctor,
that's my point. Okay.
So yeah, your point is very valid. But at the same time, even those people on the streets, it was just feel like, oh, something is playing, and then they'll just, do you get it? But the moments when you have bad music and it's very glaring, that's when you see people, oh, there is even music. Why is this? Why is that? Do you get it? The fact that the music of Anikulapo is 145 does not make it bad at all.
Okay. Yeah.
It just does not portray the story. It does not give the story the kind of depth that the story should have. Do you get it? We are talking about Anikulapo that was gotten from Anoduifa. The story is Anoduifa's. Do you get it? And then we are talking about 145 violin, and then and in contrast, Election Oba started with a big drum, boom, boom, boom. That already tells you that this is an African setting. And then they said, in fact, one of the colonial masters said, oh, the drumming I'm listening to, what's that? What's happening? It tells you something that in Africa, we use drum to communicate. So there is drum for naming ceremony, there is drum for burial, there is drum when a chief goes home, when the king dies, there is a particular set of drumming and all these things. And I think Election tried in a very good way to capture all these things. The music wasn't big, it wasn't bogus, but it interpreted all the sections. And then I tell you, it costs nothing to actually do something that portrays your music, your scripts, or that brings the story home. It costs nothing. People will still enjoy it. People enjoyed Election, but the only thing that I've heard people say is that, oh, the plot is too complex. It is too strong. We could not follow. But that is Wole Soyinka. If you want something that is very simple, go to the streets. So that's just my own take about both things. In fact, Election really made me happy being a Yoruba man, because this is how to portray our culture. They got it absolutely spot on.
Yeah, I agree with
got the story, got the cinematography, music, a downside for me. Thank you.
I think one other point which you alluded to in your presentation regarding the necessity for scholars, creatives, to familiarize themselves with literature, reading, and to analyze, So one thing that came to mind, came to mind when I saw the two, production. The first one, which is Election, but apart from being a kind of adaptation of a known literary work, it
Definitely.
also takes us, it reminded us of Michael Echero's Victorian Lagos. There's a particular chapter, I think it's chapter 2, that Echero was narrating the conflicts between the Lagos chiefs and the colonial master regarding the essence of drumming in everyday life. Yeah, and most of the things you have been explaining. So, and again, the third layer to it is the fact that the writer itself is a literary person.
Yeah.
Was an author, unfortunately we lost him. So compare to a filmmaker. So this, what I want to ask you, or what I'm bringing on board right now, is a popular discourse in literary discourse and film scholarship, which is people are now talking about the difference between the position of a writer like a literary scholar, or something like what's his name, the person that wrote Eleshioba, who has published series of novels and plays, compared to Afolayan, who is just a filmmaker and a producer. So that's a discourse which I think we can just drop here, for the obvious reason, because time is not on our side. But I just want to bring that on board because you mentioned it in your own presentation, that there's need for us to also get into the details, and from your work, also from other works I've seen in the contemporary scene, there's a huge gap between your position as a musician, a trained composer, a trained musician writing in that same genre, compared to others who are theater producer, theater practitioner, who are also writing. And that's what you explained earlier. And that's what really differentiates your kind of work with what is common, using popular music, creating story around popular music, as opposing your own idea, which is composing specifically, drawing from indigenous materials. I just want to put this for us to see. I don't know if you have anything to say before opening to our friends.
No. You've really captured it. Really captured it. About Kunle Afolayan not being a literary person. I think that what is missing in our part of the world is collaboration. There are a lot of professors in Nigeria. There are a lot of, in fact, I always make them my friends. If you go to Unilag or the creative department, I get them to preview my musical theater shows because they have that historical perspective that they would bring on board to help you shape whatever it is that you have written. And then of course, Dr. Lekon, Balogun, and the rest of them, they are people that I easily interact with. Even Dr. Dikpo Agboluaje here in the UK, there are people that easily I interact with to say, okay, can you look at this and what do you think about this before we throw it into the open? Because films and musical theater, they are instruments. They are instruments to communicate, to tell the world our story. So we must get the story right before telling it. And that's what I tell people. So I think you captured it already. Yeah.
Thanks so much. You're pointing again, but I'm going to open it up. So the essence of research, which you also mentioned, research is quite important in whatever we do. In terms of creativity, composition, theater, musical research, what has been done, going back to history, And in this context now, from the presentation of Mr. Ajayi, there's a huge connection between his own creativity and approach, between his connection and what has happened in terms of historical details. That is very important. I want us to take as part of our take home from this section today. Reading, research. I'm not just saying say research using the term, effective research that transforms knowledge. So, Mr. Ajayi, thank you so much. Thank you. I sincerely appreciate your depth and your approach today. Again, you took us into our normal route, which is the scholarly route, and now bringing in your own creative and professional route. Again, we now need to discuss with the powers that somebody needs to get to be promoted from, Thank you so much. Okay, our friends, again, this is still Organized Consultant Seminar Series. I'm going to open the platform now. If you have questions, follow-up, concern, you need clarifications, kindly raise your hand with the, with the sign on your Zoom, the reaction.